The Quest Podcast, Funds Industry Conversations.
Hello podcast listeners, and welcome to this episode of the Quest Podcast with me, Danny Lawler. If you're new to the Quest Podcast, do feel free to hit subscribe and like and share with your friends. I always really like chatting with people who are new to the financial services industry and come from outside with some ideas on how to fix some of the problems or inefficiencies that they see. And my guest for this episode is Feargal Brady. He certainly falls into that category. Feargal is an engineer by training, and his background is actually in communications, where he co-founded a company called Blueface with Aaron Clausen. As part of that business, they identified an issue with the way payments were made and efficiencies around that. And so, having exited Blueface, they decided that that was the next problem for them to tackle. So they established a firm called NoFrixion. At the time we recorded the podcast, NoFrixion was very close to receiving its authorisation from the central bank as an electronic money institute. And as we issue the podcast, that authorisation has now arrived. So congratulations to the guys in NoFrixion and best of luck. I chat with Feargal about things related to payments and inefficiencies in the payment industry and how their business tries to address that. But we also chat quite a bit about the authorisation process, the experience of dealing with the financial regulator in Ireland, and really the robustness of what is required to get from concept to authorisation and through the gate, as the regulator would call it. We also chat about where Feargal sees the payments industry being in the next 5 years, and a little bit about how Ireland as a financial services hub can position itself to make sure it's really at the forefront of developments in relation to payments, but more generally too, and a centre of excellence and a preferred domicile for firms that are in this space. So with that, let's get on with the podcast.
The Quest Podcast, Funds Industry Conversations.
Hello Feargal, thanks very much for joining me in the Quest Podcast.
Hello, Dan.
Good start. Listen, it's great to have you guesting on the podcast. Tell us a little bit about NoFrixion to kind of set the scene for why we're chatting.
Sure, yeah. Thanks for having me on. So NoFrixion is a money movement firm, and it is designed to enable businesses to make payments, receive payments, and automatically reconcile those payments within their core business application. That's the fundamental premise of the business. That's why we set it up. We're about 2 years old and going through that regulatory process, as you know.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we would chat about that in a moment. But your background is in financial services. I'm always really interested to chat to people who come from outside and have knowledge and experience in other sectors and come to the financial services industry to disrupt and do things better. So tell us a little bit about where you come from.
Sure. Well, I started my career, I suppose, in insurance, so I suppose not a million miles away from financial services. I was
Fair enough.
The world's least likely pensions consultant a long time ago. But no, I studied mechanical engineering, and then I did an MBA, and following the MBA I met up with Aaron, my co-founder here in NoFrixion, and we set up a company called Blueface, which was a IP telephony company. We processed credit card transactions back then. It was kind of just pre the PSD, and we used to store credit cards ourselves, encrypted of course. It was very difficult to obtain credit card payments back then. So we grew that business, scaled it.
And what is it that Blueface did that your competitors didn't do?
Well, it was the dawn of the IP telephony era, so it's actually quite analogous to financial services and certainly to payments. So what was happening was there was deregulation of the telecommunications industry. There were the traditional incumbent telecoms firms which grew out of the state monopolies. They had been mandated to enable access to the core telecoms network to other companies. Those companies would then sit on top of that network and provide telecom services. But just at the same time, there was open source software being released which enabled people to build what was previously a telephone exchange in a big building, and build it effectively in software on a laptop. So that was happening at the same time as deregulation and the idea of IP telephony, where you digitized your voice, transmitted it digitally over a broadband or an IP line and spat it out the other end. So it was real-time IP communications, and we built a platform. Well, Aaron built the platform. We provided it to residential and then to businesses, and of course we predicted rightly that all the telecoms world would leave analog telephony behind, move to digital telephony. So we provided a sort of white label platform for those telecoms operators to use. So we sold it to them and they sold it to end users. So that's what we were doing. There was quite a few companies around at the time. We survived. We contributed enormously to the IP telephony landscape as it is today. A lot of the software, etc., that you use in Zoom and Hangouts and all the rest of it, we were involved in designing or contributing to the code base for that. So that's what we did. And I suppose payments is somewhat similar in that there's, deregulation. It's not just banks who can provide payment services now. There's new technology which is enabling fintechs to emerge and challenge and take ownership of part of the value chain. So it's somewhat analogous to what happened in telecoms.
And I guess then maybe it's just in your makeup that you see things that could be done better and look for solutions. And as part of your previous life, you identified financial services that there are frictions.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, in Blueface, we had an awful lot of difficulty, first of all, with obtaining the ability to accept payments. And then it was the cost of accepting payments. And in particular, the cost of reconciling those payments. So when you wanted to make payments, pay suppliers, do your payroll, etc. Okay, so there was a little piece of technology which you ran your payroll, you had your accounting platform which did all your suppliers, etc. Then you had your various card providers to provide you with card acceptance, payment acceptance. But bringing all that together and tying it up was a very, very manual process and remains so. And that was the premise of NoFrixion, was to come along and provide a platform which made the idea of having separate accounting and bank account silly. There's no point in having a separate accounting platform and bank account, and not so much the accounting platform, really the bookkeeping platform, because that's where all the manual effort is, that's where all the friction is. So we wanted to remove the manual labor, the bookkeeping element of a business, and integrate it with a bank account, so that when you looked at your bank account, all your invoices, all your suppliers, all your payroll automatically reconciled. There was no manual effort required from that. And then you could go to your accounting platform, do your cash flow and your P&L and your analysis, etc. So that's the idea.
That's the idea. And having exited Blueface, you couldn't sit in your hands. You had to go and get stuck back into fixing other problems and arrive in the financial services industry.
Well, it's so frustrating, it's So that's effectively what we're doing. I think I told you before that the problem was I was trying to make a payment in Spain, trying to buy a fan, sitting in Madrid in 45 degrees, trying to buy a fan online, and it simply wouldn't accept an Irish credit card on the website. And what happens in a lot of southern European countries is, because fraud is so rife in particular, and regardless of secure customer authentication and everything else, they simply don't accept foreign credit cards. So, for example, you drive on the toll road in Spain and try and go and pay with an Irish or non-Spanish credit card at the toll, won't accept it.
Oh, really?
Full stop.
Oh, that's a good heads up.
Yeah, so you'll be stuck with lots of Spaniards behind you, beating the horn. Yeah, exactly, and you'll have to reverse out. So, yeah, it's they just won't accept it. And same with a lot of online stores. It happens all the time. So we just thought there would be a better way of doing this. And of course, Aaron, my co-founder, who's a technological tour de force, he'd been involved and dabbling in Bitcoin since around 2015-16. From a technological point of view, he got involved in the Bitcoin Core, which is Bitcoin Core runs about 80% or so of the Bitcoin network. So he's one of the core developers of that. He was showing me Bitcoin Lightning, which is a peer-to-peer payments network designed specifically for small payments, and it looks really cool. It's QR code, scan, bang, funds transmitted. Irrevocable, decentralized, instant, low cost, everything you'd want from a payments network. And we thought, wow, this is really cool. So it kind of snowballed from there.
And so as you get ready to launch NoFrixion, your license coming through, I'm sure the business has evolved and the product offering has evolved as you've gone through that process. So what is the NoFrixion offering now? What is it that businesses benefit from?
Yeah, well, we're up and running, and what we've been doing is focusing on building integrations with some of those core business applications like accounting platforms and ERP. So we're doing that bit. We've been providing the e-money account effectively as an agent or distributor of another firm who are licensed, so that we could get up and running, start learning about what the challenges are for businesses and start developing services which remove that friction. So in particular, what we've done is we provide the account Irish IBAN or UK IBAN, and payments can come into the account and they'll be automatically reconciled in your accounting platform, which means that you don't have a person or an accountancy for practice, and you're not paying them to troll through all your invoices and try and match up your bank statement, which is what traditionally happens. So if you use Xero or Sage or QuickBooks or something, the general practice is you import your bank statement, which sounds great. It's much better than reading it line by line from a paper statement, but you're still left with this list of transactions, and you got to go into them one by one. Oh, this is for this, match it against this, and it takes hours or days or weeks in many cases. So we just remove that. That's gone.
And payments out as well.
And payments out. Rolls, so payroll is a great example. Supplier invoices. So the traditional model is an invoice comes in, somebody enters it up into the accounting platform, somebody else comes along and says, right at the end of the month I got to pay this invoice. It's a new supplier. Switch over to internet banking, set up the supplier, authorize the supplier, set up the payment, authorize the payment. The whole process could take half an hour, and of course if you've got 200 invoices, it takes weeks. So what we do is invoices are there in your accounting platform, press the button, funds are set up for payment, batch payments gone. So minutes rather than hours, days, weeks.
So then presumably when you go out and talk to potential clients, it's those with heavy transactions in and out of the bank accounts that are biting your arm off. Yeah,
they're particularly of particular interest. And then the other one, what we've been looking at, of course, is the actual payment process itself. So for B2C or even B2B payments, where an invoice goes out, you would be amazed. Invoices go out and you look at it and you have to take 5 minutes to read through it and understand actually, well, where's the IBAN? How do I pay this? Is there an IBAN on it? And then the reference is up here or the account number is down here. So what we do is we provide the ability to pay, which is account-to-account payments, and part of open banking payment initiation services, and then card payments. So you send out an invoice, but there's a payment link, click on the link, and the payment can be made via card or instant account-to-account payment. And then when the payment is received, in many cases instantly, the invoice is automatically reconciled. So it's a really nice end-to-end reconciliation process, again, cutting out a lot of the friction. So open banking, as you're aware, payment initiation services is this instant bank account to bank account. Can work really, really well. In Ireland, it's good, but could be better. The underlying technology is SEPA Instant, which is instant SEPA transfer. And of course, some of the Irish banks haven't signed up for SEPA Instant yet, which means that the transfer can take 8 hours or a little more than that. But at the same time, it can be much more cost effective than cards in some instances, although cards are often better in others. But ideally, when you send out the payment link with the NoFrixion service, the main point is that the invoice is reconciled automatically, so you don't have to have a team of people in the back office trawling through your bank account trying to identify payments and match them up with the accounting platform.
So as we record, we're fingers crossed a letter of authorisation due to arrive shortly.
We would hope.
What's your take on the authorisation experience for somebody who's not done that before with the central bank?
Yeah. Well, as a close colleague of mine said, having observed the process from start to finish, as a taxpayer, it's enormously satisfying.
And as a potential regulated financial services provider?
Yeah, I think it's, I think first of all, I think we obviously went and looked 2 years ago at all, the various jurisdictions. A lot of fintechs went off to other jurisdictions because it was viewed as sort of, well, maybe it's easier to get one there. We decided we're an Irish firm, we're based in Ireland, headquartered in Ireland, we're going to grow the business from here, we want to be regulated in Ireland. The general feeling was that, Ireland's very difficult to get to get authorisation, the process is very convoluted, etc. I've found it to be, frankly, not straightforward, but I've certainly found it to be robust, in-depth, necessary, worthwhile, and we wouldn't have gone anywhere else. Having gone through the process here, we feel that Ireland is the right place for us to be regulated. We wouldn't, knowing what we know now, we wouldn't change our mind if we knew it back then. And we kind of feel it's the gold standard of regulation, really. Getting an authorisation in Ireland is a very, very valuable thing. So
it's tough, and it's meant to be tough.
And it's good that it's tough.
Yeah.
And I suppose a lot of the firms, that we've spoken to went out and they hired external consultants, lawyers to help them with the process, or in many cases actually write the application. And we just felt that we needed to own the application. We needed to understand it in depth, every part of it. And we found that to be very, very useful and worthwhile, because we now know all of the ins and outs from an operational and regulatory point of view. We know how to run the business, we know all the pitfalls, etc. And we would definitely recommend that to somebody who's actually embarking on the process. You need to actually do it yourself and understand it. So we've I have a great admiration for the process and how it's run, I have to say.
Well, it is, and as we've chatted before, the central bank does use the authorisation process as the gatekeeper, right? So the idea is to make sure that only firms that are suitable and worthy and appropriate get through that gate, because it's very difficult to fix problems afterwards, and that's not really how you want to.
That's right.
To run your supervision model.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, if you look at the the Dear CEO letters, and the first one was a couple of pages, the next one was 10, 11, 12 pages, something like that. And you look at some of the things that they're actually shocking. They're actually shocking that that a regulator would actually have to come out and write these kind of letters and point out major deficiencies in the operations of e-money or payment institutions. Like it's actually shocking, some of the things that come out. And talking to others in the industry, and some of the consultants, etc., that we spoke to, there seems to be a broad kind of lack of appreciation of just how involved the process is, and how important it is as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. And it is very involved, because it's not just about here's the directive and here are the legal obligations and let's go through how you've addressed them. It really gets under the hood and looks at your procedures and your operations, and on a day-to-day basis and a minute-by-minute basis, how do you do what you're going to do? And it's very hard for external advisors to answer those questions, because really it's the people immersed in the business who know.
That's right.
Or at least will have to figure it out.
That's absolutely right. And of course, going through the process, the things maybe that you wouldn't have thought about. It's impossible to know every single regulation, etc., starting out in the process. So maybe there's a couple of things you mightn't have thought about, and the process forces you to think about these. Certainly there are things that you could say, well, that could be improved, or you might be able to do this a bit better. But generally speaking, I think the process is robust and fit for purpose.
So coming at the other side of it, how do you view the payments landscape here in Ireland at the moment? And then, of course, 5 years down the line, what is it that you kind of see we might...
Well, we're going through, we've also got an application for registration as a VASP, a virtual asset service provider, and that's predicated on our belief that digital wallets are the way of the future, the payment method of the future. There may be central bank digital currencies, there might be a digital euro in the future. You could argue that there's a digital euro almost now. You move funds and you move euros, and it's really electronic communications are happening. There's no physical transfer of cash, oftentimes. So we think that the digital wallet is the way of the future. In 5 years' time, the idea of maybe having a card with the number emblazoned on the front and all the details you need to copy the card and use it emblazoned on the very front of the card. That idea will kind of fade away, and it'll be a digital wallet and a QR code, and you scan it, and Face ID, fingerprint ID, something like that. That's how you pay. The technology which kind of underpins that is another question, whether or not it's the current networks, the current rails, or whether it'll be something like Bitcoin Lightning that we spoke about at the top of the show. That will be what will underpin the payments network of the future, and that's what we kind of think. It may be something built on top of Bitcoin Lightning or Bitcoin Lightning itself, or some analogous kind of...
So the VASP registration is kind of future-proofing, or certainly keeping your options open for how customer preference develops over time.
Exactly, yeah. So it's our way of ensuring that we're up to date and looking into the future, and ensuring that the technology platform we're building now is capable of dealing with the emerging payments networks. So right now, I suppose it's cash, card, but you look at things like Apple Pay. Apple have obviously released this savings account in the US. the penetration of the iPhone in the US is obviously enormous, and it's in particular the market that they serve is typically, the wealthier section of society. They're offering an interest rate of between 4 and 5% on deposits. You can expect enormous take-up of that. And of course, their penetration in Europe and other markets is enormous as well. So if people start holding their money in something like an Apple Wallet, and the funds are there, why would they want to use, a card or, some other kind of payment method? So I think there's enormous potential for companies like Apple, WhatsApp or Instagram or others to provide payment services because they've got this peer-to-peer network. They've got enormous penetration, distribution, which is something that obviously companies like NoFrixion don't have and won't have.
Yeah. So, and they also obviously have the tech and the tech background, so they can make it work.
Yeah, they got the tech, they got the beautiful customer experience. You see, for example, WhatsApp has been increasingly used in a business environment in communications. When you want to book an appointment, you've got WhatsApp for business. You can, send a WhatsApp to make your appointment. So it's only another one small step to go make the booking and make the payment. And if you're accepting payments via WhatsApp, electronically over, remotely, why not start using it in store? The problem, I suppose, with payment methods is that you need that integration with the business application, particularly in retail. So you go into a retail outlet, you got your customer or your till, and that till is part of the ERP typically, and in order to actually make the payment and have that reconciled, you need to have the integration of a new payment method with the retail cash register. And of course, going into one cash register is easy, but going out to all of them and making that payment method available is really, really difficult. So something like the power and distribution of Apple and WhatsApp and some of those, I think will start penetrating those areas, and then we'll start seeing more and more adoption of digital wallets and more instant payments, peer-to-peer payments, and more use of electronic cash.
So do we get to a point where banks are really in the background as nearly your safeguarding account, and built on top of that you've got your payment institutions and your EMIs, and so your actual customer interfaces with your NoFrictions, and you very rarely see your traditional banks because everything is going...
Yeah, possibly. I mean, but going back to telecoms again, when IP telephony came out, people were saying, oh, it's the end of the telecoms companies. But of course, it isn't. It's not the end of the banks at all by any means. Like they do a lot of things really, really well, and lots of people would argue about that, but they do certain things really, really well. So they'll just, evolve and do what they do really well, and continue to do that. And things that they don't do well or have no interest in doing and probably shouldn't be doing, like providing, an integrated accounting and bank account. Is that something they want to do? Well, maybe not now.
Yeah.
Do they want to be doing payroll? Do they want to be doing all those sort of specific things that businesses require? Probably not. So there are companies who can provide real expertise and superb products which fit a particular part of a business problem. And then banks will do what they do best in the same way the telecoms companies evolved from voice, and earning money from just phone calls to providing the circuits through which all the traffic we use today flows. So that's how I think, and of course within businesses, I think, even accounting platforms, they're at a tipping point as well because they're becoming more and more vertical focused. So you'll have an accounting platform specifically for road haulage, or you'll have an accounting platform specifically for pet stores, or golf clubs. And that's what's happening because they all require, very, very specific bespoke functionality, which the generalist doesn't provide. And of course, then if the account or bank account is integrated with that, there's no need to have a separate accounting and bank account because it's all one. And that's the premise that NoFrixion is built on, that's where the world is moving to, sort of bespoke software built specifically for verticals with a bank account built into it. That's where we believe the future is. So taking control of the payment process just enables us to perform the reconciliation that's necessary to understand the payment flow end to end. And that's why we're doing what we're doing.
I'd say you've learned a lot about financial services and payments in the last couple of years.
Yes, we certainly have. I mean, we did know quite a bit about it, and it's funny when you look at something like Bitcoin Lightning. the model for Bitcoin Lightning emerged in parallel. I wouldn't say in a vacuum or in isolation from the central banking model, but actually the two models work pretty much the same way in that, you need to inject liquidity into the Bitcoin Lightning network to facilitate payments through it, exactly the same way that central banks inject liquidity into the network to allow payments through it. So it's funny how they operate more or less the same way. It's just another way of moving funds. And if you think about it, I want to pay you, I hand you a $5. Like, it's so simple. And electronic payments should be that simple, and we need to get over all of the problems that are associated with them and all the friction. I think that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And we will, I guess, if the momentum is there and
and
the benefit is there.
So well, I mean, paying with Apple Pay or Google Pay or something is it's such a cool way to pay. It's great, it's like double tap, Face ID, bang, gone, done.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so as you wrap up, Feargal, you're obviously couple of years in, and the license is coming very shortly, so it's a real milestone for the business. But you would. What are your expectations and hopes for the business over the next 5 years?
So over the next 5 years, the idea is to continue building out the tech stack. Really excited about that. It's really, really powerful. We've shown already the potential. What we're doing with the customers we have, they're really excited about it. Some of the verticals we've spoken to, really excited about it. And I think there's a lot more to come. So the idea is to continue building out the tech stack, obviously leverage the license and to continue to expand outside of Ireland. Obviously, we've got a couple of customers in the EU already. We want to continue to expand that and, build the future, I suppose, of business finance. That's really the goal, to remove all that friction from the movement of funds, automate the reconciliation and become almost invisible to the business so nobody knows we're here because it's so frictionless.
Yeah. Like the referee in a football match.
Well,
you don't
see really good referee.
You don't see
like Pierluigi Collina or somebody.
And last question then. So if you think more broadly about the Irish financial services industry and how it does what it does and tries to continue in a position of preeminence and one that's well respected and regarded into the next 5 years, what is it that a couple of key things that they really need to get right or not take their eye off the ball on?
Yeah, well, I think the continue to ensure that the process is robust, in depth and fit for purpose. I think that's continuing the sort of tradition that's there already and ensuring that firms which are authorised here have gone through this enormously rigorous process. I think that's vital. Of course, there's plenty of associations and organisations. There's a great startup culture in Ireland. It's a great place to start a business. So I think, all the basic ingredients are there. I think, maybe there's some policies the government could introduce to try and encourage more fintechs to maybe locate here. I think there's been a lot of talk about some of the fintechs that do exist that have grown up over the last 5 or, even 10 years. And, there's been talk about whether or not the licensing regime or authorization regime that they've been licensed in is sufficiently robust and maybe we should be attracting those companies here, getting them to go through the process here. But generally speaking, I think we're in a pretty good position. I'm certainly happy and confident and hopeful for the future.
Always happy to finish a podcast on a positive note.
There you go.
So thank you very much for joining me in this episode.
Thanks a lot, Danny.
Take care.
Thank you.
The Equest Podcast, Funds Industry Conversations.